Okay, hello, fellow alums, readers, supporters, and staff members of the Daily Bruin. Welcome to the 2020 Daily Bruin Alumni Network virtual reunion. Before we get into the program, a public service announcement in the times of the coronavirus. We are tonight in meeting mode of Zoom, not in webinar. So please keep your screens on speaker view and keep yourself muted throughout the presentation out of respect to our speakers. Now, you're welcome to use the chat function to add your questions throughout the meeting, or to say hi to your buddy from the copy desk back in 1999. And after the presentation, we will indeed unmute everybody. Tonight, we are presenting the third annual State of the Bruin Conversation and toasting the Daily Bruin Scholarship recipients. Next Tuesday night, the DBAN will present our autumn alumni mentoring workshop, The Art of Storytelling, with Alejandra Reyes of the LA Times for our student staffers and alums. Now, look, we all wish that we are all back in Westwood tonight instead of here on Zoom, but I'm delighted to see so many of you join us virtually and support the Bruin. We will be back in Kirkhoff Hall in due course, catching up with old friends and thumbing through the hardbound archives again. Which brings us to this extraordinary academic year and publishing year ahead for the Daily Bruin. Per tradition, we have asked a former editor-in-chief of the Bruin to come back and moderate the State of the Bruin. James Barragán, class of 2013, served as the editor-in-chief of the Bruin in 2012 and 13. That year, James introduced the position of the online managing editor. Now, James, I'll have you know that back in 1994, we started to use email at the Bruin. So anyway, James covers Texas politics for the Dallas Morning News. He has covered immigration, public safety, voting rights, and has traveled on assignment to the US Supreme Court and Houston during Hurricane Harvey. Before joining the Dallas Morning News in 2017, he worked for the Austin American-Statesman and the LA Times. Now, James, I yield the floor to you and the current management team.
Okay, Lawrence, thanks so much for that introduction. I'm very excited to be here with all of you and hear about the State of the Bruin. And we have three great Daily Bruin leaders with us today who are we're gonna have this conversation moderated. And they're gonna give a brief presentation and then we'll get into the nitty gritty with a couple of questions to see how they're surviving in this crazy pandemic Zoom world. I know a lot of my work is being done on meetings like this. And so I can't wait to hear from them about how it's going for them. But I guess first I'll let them introduce themselves. Melissa, Liz, and Lucy, if you guys could introduce yourself really briefly. We can start off with Melissa.
Okay. Hi. Hello, sorry. My name is Melissa Morris. I'm the editor-in-chief this year at the Daily Bruin. I am a fourth-year global studies student and environmental systems minor. And previously, I worked for news and our enterprise section. So that's me.
Okay, and Lucy or Liz, do you guys want to hop in?
Oh, there it goes. Hi, I'm Lucy. I'm the managing editor at Daily Bruin, and I am a third-year political science and sociology student. And I was in the opinion section last year as the opinion editor. So thank you all for coming. Nice to see you.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm the digital managing editor at the Daily Bruin. I'm a fourth-year communications student and a digital humanities minor. And previously, I was the photo editor.
Cool. So thank you guys for those introductions. We're excited to hear from you guys. I think first to start off, Melissa has a PowerPoint presentation that she has to kind of walk us through what this last year has been like and how they are adjusting. So I'll let you take it away, Melissa.
All right, let's see. Okay, Liz, if you want to get us going.
For sure. So first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about analytics and how we've been doing data-wise the past few months ever since all this craziness has started. So if we want to go to the next slide and then the next one. Cool. So April through June is kind of when everything hit, obviously. And so since the outbreak of the coronavirus, we've seen huge growth in how many users we're reaching online. In fact, we've seen a 52.15% increase in readership over 1 year, largely due to the coronavirus, which is really cool to see. And we're also seeing that people are more engaged with our stories in terms of how much time they spend reading them. So kind of this summer and looking towards this next fall, we've still seen high numbers in terms of readership. And we ended up publishing 376 pieces of content, and 80 of those stories were about COVID-19. So looking to the future, some of the challenges that we're encountering are kind of going to be attracting incoming students, many of whom have never actually been on campus or who have maybe only visited once, to read our content, and making meaningful changes to sustain those high levels of readership over the course of the year when we have slower content. Other exciting news, we just redesigned our website this year. It's been a long time coming, so that was really excited. It looks like this. Check it out if you can. Something else that we were working on is this tracking coronavirus at UCLA page. This is something that we made in response to the pandemic to track how many cases were in the UCLA community as well as the Los Angeles community. It actually just won a Pacemaker Award, I believe, which is really exciting, and we are continually updating it. We've also had some special issues in the past few months, our registration issue, graduation issue, orientation issue, and then most recently, an issue focusing on the 2020 election and how that impacts students. And so then hiring is a little weird when we're operating completely over Zoom, but we actually were still able to get more applications this year than we have in other years, which was really exciting to see. However, like we saw that sections that operate well remotely, like a lot of our writing sections and social media, for example, fared better in terms of how many applications we were getting, while sections that are dependent on in-person events didn't get as many applications, which is to be expected.
Cool. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of like some of the new challenges that we're facing, especially regarding print. That's the obvious one. But here are some slide excerpts from our spring training for editors. Go ahead. Cool. So new challenges and a photo of an old challenge. So right now we have a 9-person office, which means like we have a certain amount of people, editors, that can come into the office. They have to schedule a time to come in, so we have very limited access, and the office is still recovering from what you see in the right-hand picture, which is a flood that happened a few quarters back. So there's a lot of debris and clutter. It might not be the office that you knew in its heyday, but it's still there. We just don't go in it as often. And then also we have staff on different time zones, which has been really interesting, and we have some new perspectives coming out of that in our content, but it can be difficult in kind of scheduling things. We have had some revenue loss, obviously, from advertising in the print paper because we're only printing once a week. And then, of course, institutional knowledge transfer has become a little bit more difficult in terms of teaching the new editors about print production. The good news is that we had new editors who were really willing to take on the challenge. So right about the time that we were hiring our new editor team, COVID was happening. So we were really excited that editors were still willing to come on and learn even in this strange virtual time. And because we use Slack so often, we were ready to make that digital jump. So it wasn't too huge of an adjustment for us, which was very helpful. And then it's also allowed us to do more in terms of digital first expansion, which I think, as Liz showed, has really paid off. And then here's just some wholesome photos of our top editor staff. So yeah, these are the people running all of the sections. A few of them are here today. Lena on the top there is one of our scholarship winners. And I think I saw some other current staffers in the Zoom meeting, so maybe they're here. Cool. So print, this is just kind of an overview of what happened. I think many of you know, but COVID-19 shut down print from March 20th until, I think at the time I wrote this, it was 2 weeks ago, a little bit more now. And then we lost summer print, as I said before, and lost kind of the learning experiences that come with that. I think one nice thing about summer is that it's kind of a slow pace and allows editors to learn at a slower pace and then get into the daily grind. So we didn't have that, but we are printing once a week now. So yeah, as I said, we're printing once a week. We're printing on Mondays. We've had to adjust the way that we do print, obviously. So right now we're doing a priority system for content where we publish content daily throughout the week like we normally would, but all online. And then we pick the either most timely, most newsworthy, or like most important stories to go in the print paper. So we also have limited print day production because obviously our #1 priority is keeping our staff safe. So we want them out of the office as much as possible, as little human contact as possible, unfortunately. Yeah, and then we're kind of in a test run stage for advertising right now, doing once a week, and we will kind of reevaluate at the end of this quarter to see how it goes. Cool, so moving forward, like I said, we can't say for sure. Digital first production is financially very appealing, and obviously the Daily Bruin has become more digital throughout the years, and this has been a big jump for us. But print is also what a lot of people are here for, and it's close to a lot of people's hearts that we are one of the only daily print papers at the UC. So I think a lot of people want to get back to that. So essentially it's a balancing act. We're looking at what's best for the longevity of the Bruin, but also how we can best like actually emulate a newsroom for our staffers.
Okay, so we have a couple new projects in the work this quarter and this year as well. So I'm going to go through some of those. So this year we added some new editor positions. So the first being our assistant social media director. Social media is one of our biggest pulls for readership. So it's been kind of crazy having one person do that job the past couple of years. So we're really excited that we got to bring on someone new. We've had a lot of great content come out, Instagram stories, like clever tweets, that kind of stuff. So Shirley is awesome. We have also expanded the illustrations section into illustrations and cartoons because we've kind of strayed away from political cartoons in the past couple of years, but we feel like there is an opportunity to start expanding there, especially because we have Andrea Grigsby. I don't know if you've seen her cartoons, but she's super passionate about it, and we're excited to be bringing that back in a big way. And then our podcast editor, Kristen Snyder, because this is one of those emerging fields, and we want to make sure that we're at least experimenting with something new, given that we do have the extra bandwidth this year, I guess. So the other thing, we recently came out with the Daily Bruin community guide. So we had a link to the community guide on the main site for previous years, but it unfortunately led to a 404 error. So now there is an actual guide on the end of that, and that is meant to like offer transparency to our readers. So we talk about some of the like terms that we use, like what do we mean when we're saying we're doing an update versus a correction, that kind of thing. And then also some of our goals in terms of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So it's just like so people know what's going on with us. Oh, and then there's James on the little slide too. So we have Marilyn this year. So we expanded the alumni director position into an outreach director position, which means Marilyn is doing the most, like balancing between normal alumni responsibilities and also working to connect with different on-campus groups. But we have the Daily Bruin Alumni Instagram, which is really exciting. If any of you are on Instagram and would like to follow it, just to very subtly plug it. And we have UCLA One, which is aimed at connecting current staffers with alumni from Daily Bruin for mentorship and like career advice. So that's pretty exciting. All right, another thing we're trying this year is soliciting feedback. So that's internal. We've set up a lot of different opportunities, and we try to publicize when we're taking on new goals so that the staff can get involved on any project. Like we do little working groups kind of things. And we have like anonymous feedback that goes straight to upper management. Externally, we issued our first community survey. So that's aimed at, I guess, like we're trying to not necessarily do exactly what readers want, because we're here to do a particular job and we need to stick to that no matter what people think. But at the same time, we are trying to be open to opportunities for improvement. So the ones that we might not necessarily see, but our readers do, we want to make sure that we're always improving our service. So that's kind of the idea there. We have some goals on internship accessibility. These are still very much in the works as opposed to the previous slides, which are pretty much happening or have happened. So with internships, it's difficult because we, as a student publication with not that much money, we are not able to pay people very much money, as I'm sure many of you know. So that makes it a little bit difficult for low-income students to like have access to our internships when they are really important if you're choosing to pursue a career in journalism. So we have some different steps here that we're taking to try to make it so that the Daily Bruin is a welcoming and inclusive place for everybody. And then, of course, we kind of touched on this earlier, but we have a lot of new content that's always being innovated. So there's some new opinions where people are doing personal columns. The Instagram stories have really popped off this year. And then we also introduced a caption contest. You can see the winning caption on the right. So that's courtesy of our brand new cartoons department. And I think that is it.
Oh, great. That was awesome. That was a great presentation. It's really exciting to see all the changes you guys are making, and with the podcast and the Instagram stories. It's some of the stuff that we're doing even at the Dallas Morning News. So super exciting. I guess since you guys have just gotten done with training, I'd like to ask about that. I'm sure people are curious about it and how it's gone in terms of how are you recruiting all these people and how are you interviewing them? Is it a lot of Zoom sessions? How are you making sure that people are still, you know, who are interested are still getting the information that they need to join the paper?
Yeah, I can answer this one. So it's been a lot of effort on Marilyn's part in terms of reaching out to individual groups, and on our D-Band recipient, scholarship recipient Lena, and our social media department's part, just trying to get the word out on every platform we possibly can. We also increased the number of open houses that we held over Zoom, and every single club that reached out saying, hey, we're doing a virtual club fair, we said yes. We were at every single one you could think of, trying to win people over and show them our slides and be charming to get them to join us.
Very cool. Liz, I guess if you want to weigh in, I imagine you're overseeing some of the things that I was talking about, like the podcast and Instagram stories and the assistant social media editor. How has that been like, and how do you strike the balance in terms of, you know, I heard you guys talking about how the print paper and the legacy paper is so important to the students there. It's important to all of us here on this call. But also, as you guys move into the digital media landscape, and if some of you guys have professional aspirations, I imagine that's part of the reason why you guys are moving into some of these directions, and how do you guys balance that?
Yeah, so I think the way I've kind of chosen to look at this year is, even though it's a bummer in a lot of ways that we don't get to kind of do the same daily print exercise that we have been doing and that I've been doing for the past 3 years. It's still a really exciting opportunity to expand more into the digital frontier. It's nice to not have the day-to-day kind of scheduled grind, for lack of a better word, where we're in the office and we're making sure that we're filling up a print paper and we're making sure that all X, Y, and Z are happening. It's kind of given us leeway to put more time and energy into making sure that larger long-term projects or projects that have a lot of really promising multimedia elements really get the time and space to shine in the future. So taking advantage of our assistant social media director, for example, our social media team to kind of help us get the word out that these things are happening, to continue to attract readers to our site, even though we aren't physically producing a paper every day, is still a great opportunity for us, I think.
And when you guys were talking about call outs and like that community engagement stuff, is that so, hey, we're working on a certain story and you guys have forms, or how does that work? I love that kind of engagement stuff.
Yeah, so we kind of do that in a few different ways. We've had a few things that are kind of like Reddit AMAs, where we will kind of try to directly interact with the community there. On our Instagram stories, sometimes we call for comments or submissions. Like we just recently had an Instagram story asking people about the 2020 election, things like that, to just kind of try to say, hey, we're trying to work on this, or we are working on this and we would love to hear from you. And a lot of that ends up being through social media.
Yeah, and just to jump in on that as well, we've also put out like a community survey. So we've been circulating that on social media, and then Marilyn and our graphics team sort of compiled some of the results that we got, so we could hear directly from our readership what topics they felt were being covered well, poorly, or not at all. So those are things that sort of point our attention in new ways so that we can try to be more responsive to what our readers are looking for.
And in terms of the podcast, are there any podcasts already available, or are those things that are in the works? When can we hear or expect some of those?
Yeah, we actually have a few podcasts up right now. Kristen has been working on a really cool series called Booking It, where it's kind of like a virtual book club. Her and some of the arts editors have been reading books together, and they come on this podcast to talk about them. And the goal is kind of to start engaging with our readers and get them to read the book on the same timeline, so that when they tune into that podcast, it's kind of like, you know, they don't get to talk back, but there's kind of like that sense of like community and timeline there. There are also we have a podcast called In the News, I believe, and we publish those every now and again. But yeah, there are a bunch if anyone needs something to listen to in all this time we're spending at home. So
very cool. Shout out to my buddy Sam Strong, our former sports editor. Give me a shout out there in the chat. It's good to hear from you, buddy. Lucy, Melissa, I guess I wanted to talk to you guys about, with the once a week printing, that leads to, you guys are still working, I assume, every day that we used to work in, and there's still stories to be churned out. I assume USAC is still meeting on Tuesday nights or whenever they're meeting nowadays, and making your lives hell, trying to make those deadlines. But so how do you guys make those decisions about, you know, okay, this is a story that was good on, you know, Tuesday night heading into Wednesday morning, but for, you know, for the Monday paper, you know, are there some stories that get the axe, and you guys are just figuring out how to update them at that last minute on Sunday night, or you guys just say flat out, we're not running? You know, we do some of that stuff at the Dallas Morning News. We just flat out make decisions about what runs and what doesn't. But I'm curious how you guys are handling that and adjusting to that.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I think our number one priority is just like keeping people safe and out of the office as much as possible, and making our design and copy editors' lives easy for production on that Sunday night and during the day. So a lot of the decisions we're making about what goes in print are like kind of informed by that. But just as a little bit of background, we are publishing pretty much the same amount of content just online. So the work that we would be doing if we were printing 5 days a week is still happening. It's just not going into the paper 5 days a week. And then we are printing once a week with a select amount of content that is like a normal size paper. So that decision is made usually on like around Saturday. And we're trying to make sure that our editors are like involved in that decision. So we're kind of soliciting their feedback throughout the week about what they would like to see in the print paper, because obviously like the section heads know their section best. And then upper management is kind of taking that final look over it, making sure everything looks good. So we're basing things on timeliness. If it's like breaking news, we'll be putting it in. But essentially it's just kind of like the stories that are most hard hitting for the community right now. And that's what's going in the print paper. And then we publish everything else online.
Another question I wanted to get to is, you know, a big part of the Daily Bruin experience and why so many of us are, you know, love the experience of working for the student paper and are coming back to this Zoom just to relive it and see how you guys are doing, is the camaraderie that you really build in the office, and you know, spending the time in the office in between classes, skipping classes for an important story, or if something's breaking, those nasty old sofas that used to be there, which I hope are not there anymore. How have you guys kept that, you know, that camaraderie alive, even though everything is through Zoom now? How's that going?
Well, first, I can tell you that the couches are in fact still there, despite the fact that they got flooded on. They are definitely still there. But in terms of camaraderie, I would say that it's been tough. Like, to be honest with you, we definitely are aiming to. That's Westwood. We are trying to make sure that things stay mostly over Zoom as opposed to settling for Slack where we can help it. So EJ is in this meeting. He's our opinion editor. We've been doing editorial board totally over Zoom, content meetings totally over Zoom, budget 2 out of the 5 days a week over Zoom, because even though we can't really see each other, that's like our proxy. So I think mostly like social Slack, trying to make sure that everyone's meeting on a regular basis and looking at each other instead of just slacking is our stand-in measure for right now.
What about the pace of the news, everything that's happening? It's been, I think we can all agree, it's been a crazy year, 2020, just wild. And it just seems like every year is crazier year after year, right? But I think this one really has taken the cake, you know, with world pandemic, and then we have, of course, the social unrest over racial injustice. There's been obviously coverage of that, important coverage that you all have had to do. And now the presidential elections. And so how have you guys kept up with that? How do you make sure you keep the staff, you know, at least breathing and making sure that they're taking some time to themselves and being okay? Talk about that challenge a little bit.
I can take part of this one at least, but I think, yeah, what you said, it was pretty interesting because as we had our editor turnover coming into the new year, that's when everything with COVID happened. And then immediately once summer hit, all of the racial justice protests began. So our news editors especially really, I don't know if any of them are here, but shout out news because they've really been thrown into it. And I think that was difficult and stressful, but in some ways prepared them really well for the pace of news in this year, because it has continued to be insane and I think will continue to be insane. And I think we've dealt with that to a certain extent by kind of trying to schedule out chaos. So for example, with the upcoming election, we know that things are going to go a little crazy probably. And so if that means like helping our national and higher ed news editor kind of slow down on their content a little bit and prepare for all of the breaking that's about to happen, that's one way we might do it. I think it's really been nice in some ways that we don't have print, that we don't have print every day. It has allowed us a little bit more flexibility just because we haven't been able to, you know, train people in person and get that in-person experience. Everything's a little bit slower and more disjointed over Slack and Zoom. So the fact that we don't have the everyday pressure of print on top of just the craziness of this year has been helpful in kind of facilitating that.
Yeah, a little like silly add-on is So we introduced something called a toast pass. So that is inspired by Liz's like 5th grade teacher, 3rd grade teacher. But essentially the idea is that if you use a toast pass, like, and you miss an assignment, you're not toast. So we have like these little arbitrary units of where if people miss an assignment, like there's a planned out amount of flexibility that we're granting in advance. So we're, in addition to trying to make sure that content requirements are feasible, knowing that people need to take time for themselves because this is an exceptional year. So we're trying to schedule that in as well.
I love that toast pass. And if you guys have questions for the people who are on Zoom, obviously, if you have questions that you guys want to ask our panelists, please drop them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer some of them. I had a question just about the quote wall, since Lawrence brought it up. Is that still around? How are we preserving the quote wall? Are we saving them for later? How's this working?
I guess I can take this one. Last time I was in the office, all of last year's quotes are definitely, there are quite a few that are still up there. It'll be really interesting when we or the next class of editors finally get to go back into the office. They'll be archaic at that point, and they'll kind of get to relive that. But I think for now, we have, I guess the closest things are on Slack. We have a few kind of more fun, lighthearted channels where people are just kind of like doing things that are more social or posting about funny things that happened to them that day and the likes. There is the ability to pin messages on Slack. So I think that's kind of the way to replicate that virtually. It's kind of just typing it out and sticking a pin on it so that you can go back and see it whenever you want to. Obviously, it's not the same. But whatever we can do to kind of hold on to that is always kind of fun.
Yeah, I like that. You should have them battling it out for whoever gets the pinned tweet, you know, who says the most ridiculous thing. I did get a question earlier on from folks about just returning to the racial justice protest. Outside of, and maybe most of this goes to your community engagement survey, but outside of opinion and outside of editorials, are there any places in the newspaper that are dealing particularly with this issue, since it has become like one of the top issues, I think, of this year?
So we have some sections working on independent projects regarding the situation. So our data journalism section, Stack, is working on policing reports. Our enterprise section is doing investigations with UCPD. I believe our video section recently came out with a video on like how to protest and different things regarding UCPD. So it's kind of been an all hands on deck sort of operation at this point. And I don't know, at some, like, just candidly, sometimes I wonder if we're thinking about it enough, because I think that it is something that's really on people's mind. And even with the sort of flexibility of production now, like we get sort of caught up in the day-to-day operations, but it is something that we're trying to like really make an effort to make sure that it's not slipping from our mind by bringing it up at different meetings and planning ahead for opportunities to talk about those kinds of things. I know, so this is going back to opinion and editorial, but we had a situation where we completely turned over our editorial board space to the African Student Union to see what they had to say in the heart of the protest moment. And then also our opinion section, that in my words column, is an opportunity for students of color to talk about their own experiences. So it's an imperfect solution, but we are trying to open ourselves up to that kind of commentary.
I guess another question that I would have is what can we all do who are on this call to help you guys out? Is there anything in particular that you guys need, whether that be advice or I don't know? Is there something that you all need and that alumni could help you all with?
Okay, well, Liz and Lucy, I'm just gonna throw this out there. It's been super, super wonderful with the fundraising campaign that just concluded, because EJ is throwing it out there, because it sounds like kind of not that exciting or interesting, but for us, it really does make a difference because it's helping to finance students who might not otherwise be able to continue with us. And that with the office destroyed and everything, like we do need new things. So it's pretty, it's one that is unfortunate that we focus on it so much, but it happens. So hopefully Liz and Lucy.
Yeah, I think kind of adding on to that, yes, fundraising is something that we value a lot. It's actually been really helpful in helping some of our sections that do a lot of in-office production be able to adjust to working remotely with different like cloud softwares and stuff like that. But then beyond the fundraising, we always love when alumni chip in for alumni critiques, when it's great and they kind of hop in and take a look at what we've published recently and let us know what they think. That's always really fun. Those are always really fun for us to read. Hopefully they're fun for you guys to do. And it's always really great, especially when we get someone from a specific section who has a lot of like really in-depth knowledge about those things to kind of hear their feedback and what they have to say. And we always try to take that into consideration going forward.
Also for critique, we are conducting them over Zoom now. So if any of you want to join live, that is definitely an opportunity. You don't have to write it down. You could potentially pop in on our meeting and get to meet the staff like in action. We're generally holding those Sundays at 11:45 a.m. Pacific time, but Marilyn will be able to send out details once we pin down the schedule a little more. But we'd love to have you there. That would be fun.
Lucy, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I guess my feeling is like critique, like fundraising, and also just like more general feedback. Like I don't think any of us want you to feel like pressured to go through these like formal channels of like sending in a critique or doing matching donations or anything. Like we really understand that we're all kind of like tied to DB and we're like a network and like a little DB family, extended family. So really if feedback just looks like sending us some ideas about like topics we haven't covered or like your thoughts on the most recent paper, like we always really appreciate that. And I know our staff appreciates it a lot to see, you know, people from years past and what's changed, what hasn't. And I think that's always really helpful. And honestly, anything is a morale boost right now. So we would always take that and love it. So yeah.
Okay, a couple of questions from folks in the chat. Robina wants you guys to explain, and I also want to hear more about the flood. I'm curious to hear more about it. And then Jillian Beck, of course, our former campus editor, has questions about the UCLA administration and USAC during the pandemic and whether they've been cooperative, and any investigations you're particularly proud of from this year.
Okay, I can start with the flood if we want to go in chronological order. But the flood happened, I want to say winter quarter or maybe early spring quarter of last year. Yeah, not totally sure. But essentially, we had never had a water cooler in the office. So we were very excited when a water cooler came to the office. Oh, it was November fall quarter. Okay, EJ, sorry. The time really flies. So we got our water cooler and essentially, long story short, the water cooler betrayed us and exploded in the middle of the office and flooded the office, leaving like probably, I want to say it was like a solid foot high puddle throughout the entire office. And we couldn't get it off for a while. Yes, as Marilyn said, it was a hot and cold water heater, so it was very exciting. But yeah, the office was pretty wet, and what happened was like the hose from the water cooler kind of sprayed everywhere. So like a lot of the wall quotes also were drenched, and then mildew formed, and we had a like microbial hazard sign up for a while because there was mold. So it was a long process, a long recovery process from the flood. Were you able to save the hardbound archive? Yeah, it didn't get on that side. So those were safe. But yeah, the flood that's what happened. And I think there's no more mold in the office right now, but now there's no one to enjoy it because of COVID. So.
What a year. What a year.
Oh, it sounds
And-
like Amy has a video of the flood. It's down in the chat if you want to see it.
Okay, I guess we'll answer the question if you guys want to take a crack at the UCLA and USAC administration, whether they've been cooperative. And I think we'll maybe after that, we'll turn it back over to Lawrence. But yeah, I would love to hear how it's been. That's one of the things I'm worried about actually next year when we're in our legislative session and how they're going to be able to duck us and avoid us. So I'm curious to hear, maybe get some tips from you guys on how to maybe avoid that.
So I would say USAC so far has been a little subdued, I think, because normally like the sort of infighting that they generally experience that causes drama has happened less because they're sort of focused on trying to deal with pandemic aid, and because they're not in person to like really like do the side eye kind of thing and like anger each other. So that's been generally good. And then with UCLA admin, we've been able to meet with the chancellors. We had our usual quarterly meeting at the very beginning of this quarter. So that's been all right. I would say our biggest transparency problem in reporting so far has been CPRAs, like FOIA requests, and generally trying to get like documented records. It's been many weeks that we are getting pushed off on these types of things. So we're trying to take new steps now. So stay tuned and we'll see if we're able to get those.
All right, anybody else want to weigh in? You guys are good? All right, well, if not, then I think this was great. I enjoyed listening and hearing from you guys about how things are going. I wish you guys the best of luck on an exciting, very crazy year, but you guys seem to be doing an awesome job. I will cheerlead you guys on Twitter. I hope other people will do the same. Maybe on Instagram too. I don't know what other social media apps there are anymore. I am becoming no longer hip. So I will cheerlead you guys in any way possible, and the rest of us will as well. So thanks for this chat, and good luck to all you guys. And Lawrence, I'll hand it over back to you. Lawrence, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, party foul. Well, thank you, James and Melissa, Liz, and Lucy. And as always, an impressive group of people leading the paper, and what a year you have ahead of you. Little update on the network, your alumni network. As you know, we just concluded our second annual Daily Bruin Scholarship fundraiser, and very pleased to announce tonight that we have not only met our $10,000 annual goal, but beat it by a ton. A little over 13,000 is where we're at tonight unofficially. Want to give a shout to Carrie Champion, class of 98, Robina Riccatello, class of 84, and on with us tonight, I believe. And Gary Now, class of 1975, for their leadership in our first ever donation challenges. And Carrie, the 2018 Distinguished DB Alumna, led off with a $1,000 donation match that caught the attention of the athletic director and the women's basketball coach. In the second donation challenge for a grand, it was yours truly and the board's turn, and you hashtag made Larry pay to the tune of $2,700. Robina and I have decided to go ahead and pony up and double our contributions to see if we can match that number. And so finally, in the cleanup slot, Uncle Gary, the 2019 Distinguished DB Alumni, stepped up with a $5,000 donation challenge, and we raised another $2,100 to be matched by Gary, and that money will go toward building the scholarships funds base for the longer run. Now, in a pandemic, with all of its accompanying worries and financially and otherwise, you really have come through big time. I'm really humbled by and grateful for your tremendous support and generosity. Also, as you look at the graphics in all of our social media this summer, I want to thank Marilyn Chavez Martinez, the Daily Bruin Outreach Director, as well as Ben Brill, Graphics Editor, Callista Wu, Design Editor, and the rest of the Daily Bruin social media design graphics team for their outstanding coordination and work in support of this year's very successful fundraising campaign. So let's meet our scholars. The DB Scholars Program was launched in 2019 by Matt Stevens, Kelly Rayburn, and yours truly to recognize and support the dedicated student staffers of the Bruin pursuing careers in journalism, media, and related fields. This year, we're presenting 5 Merrill Scholarships of $2,000 each to these members of the UCLA class of 2021. They are Sam Connon, Sports Senior Staff, majoring in Communication. Olivia Fitzmaurice, Blogging Senior Staff, majoring in Communication. This is her second award. Cassidy Hunt, Sports, double majoring in English and History. Lena Nguyen, Social Media Director, double majoring in Communication and Political Science. Julia Shapiro, News Senior Staff, majoring in Political Science. And of course, as we say among the alumni, we all majored in the Bruin. On behalf of their entire class, we'd like to invite Lena Nguyen to share her thoughts on the meaning of this award. Lena?
Hi there, can you all hear me? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lawrence, for introducing me, and for everyone on behalf of the Daily Bruin Alumni Network who's been working so diligently behind the scenes to coordinate this virtual reunion here tonight. While we're not meeting in ideal circumstances, I can't help but be incredibly grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight in honor of this year's Daily Bruin Scholarship, alongside 4 other remarkable and talented writers that I've had the privilege to work alongside in my time in our newsroom. So from going above and beyond to meet our fundraising efforts to providing 5 amazingly generous scholarships to student journalists, I can't help but thank the Daily Bruin Alumni Network tonight for supporting the next generation of aspiring professionals. And with us all being seniors, as we venture out into this really turbulent and uncertain time, I know that we're going to share one common theme, no matter what career or professional field we go into, and that's going to be our love of journalism and our roots in Kirchhoff 118. So we all started as interns not knowing much about what CQing means or how to source. Yet as we grew into the world of reporting, I've seen this newsroom accomplish really phenomenal things like keeping our university accountable, dropping everything to cover a wildfire even during finals week, and marching along protesters amid the turbulent racial unrest that we've experienced. So in my time at UCLA, I have to say that I'm most proud of my work in the Bruin, and none of it could be possible without the staff and support that we've received. I've learned invaluable skills in the newsroom, from how to think on my feet to how to push the boundaries of what's possible and how to always ask the tough questions. And I know all of us feel the same. So with a shift to an increasingly more digital newsroom and the challenges of COVID-19 for newsrooms across the country, we know that the Bruin that you see today might look very different from the Bruin that you knew in your time, with new challenges and unique hurdles. But at the end of the day, we're all here because of a common mission to serve our community. And I hope we can make each and every one of you here tonight proud. And I can't help but thank everyone who's made this possible, from all the alumni here tonight to Marilyn, who's coordinated this amazing team-wide effort for fundraising and connecting us with all of you, our upper management team of Melissa, Liz, and Lucy for leading this newsroom through probably one of the toughest times, not just journalism or our staff has seen, but most Americans. And I'd like to thank everyone that has worked so diligently to make even our one day of print possible still, to make every single flat page and interactive possible online, to bring our students the news that they need about the really difficult times we're facing, about COVID-19, and about the 2020 election. And I know that we're going to keep continuing to do the amazing work that we're doing. And I can't wait to see what all of us accomplish. And I hope that we can continue to make our alumni proud. So once again, thank you so much for your support. I'm incredibly honored to accept this award here today. And I'm so appreciative to be a recipient, and I know all of my fellow recipients are well. So thank you again, and I hope we get to meet back in person. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lawrence and my team.
Okay, thank you so much, Lena. And at this point, I hope that everybody's got a adult beverage of your choice. And I'd like to raise a glass to you, Sam, Olivia, Cassidy, and Julia. Congratulations on this year's award. And that brings us to the end of the program tonight. In closing, reminder that the DBAN is only going to be as good as our alumni volunteers. So please get in touch with us if you wish to do something with our network and for the paper. As mentioned by the young folks, please sign up for the Alumni Critique Program this year. That's all that involved is you reading one production of the Bruin, one day's worth of a website basically, and doing a little memo for them. You can sign up online that way for that one. We'll work on getting together with them on their Sunday critiques, and we'll get back to you on that. Please do visit your Alumni Association homepage. Remember to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. In closing, be well, take good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and see you next week at the Art of Storytelling workshop. Thank you and good night.